So in today's video, I'm going to share with you a couple of very simple tips that took a new client of mine, using his own words, from someone who's never drawn the ball, just always hit weak fades and slices, into hitting power draws all day long. So I think most golfers, right-handed golfers especially, hit that fade and they feel it costs them lots and lots of distance. And whenever they see someone hit the draw shot, they think it's unbelievably good looking shot, goes further. It's just something they can't do. So I'm just going to pop up the numbers from an opening shot with a client the other day. So his setup was really, really good. And then as he swung, we could see massively out to in, club face wide open. But the good news is his low point was ahead of the golf ball. Now, like a lot of golfers, he told me that he knew that he was very out to in, over the top in his golf swing, but kind of struggled because he felt that as he changed his path, he really struggled with his golf shots. So let's understand first of all why he struggled and why you probably struggle if that's the case with you. Is the golf ball sets off incredibly close to where the club face points, and then the direction the club's moving through impact, or the path, creates the shape. Now, for the new client, the problem was that club face was wide open, so you could see almost pointing towards the camera there, and the way his brain could get the ball setting off straight was to swing much more out to in, and obviously I've then squared the club face up, but we can see my path there 6 degrees out to in. So the first thing we said we needed to change was actually his club face where that pointed rather than the path. And it was an interesting one because he kind of would stand there and say, I don't really know how to change that. And if you're working through this video, do this with me. So hold the club up in front like that. You can see that club face is nice and square. So then show me what an open club face would look like. Show me what a closed club face would look like. And he found that incredibly easy. But the challenge was, he's got great club face control at 0 mile an hour. But at 70 mile an hour when he was swinging, had no awareness because he'd never really worked on it. So the first challenge is, I said I wanted him to try and hit the ball left. So his first shot, he kind of went, so still left the club face a little bit open. And the paths were still massively out to in, as I've shown there. And that club face, 12 degrees open. So even though the shot ended up looking half decent, we could see there was a massive issue potentially when he got into straighter face clubs. So I then asked him what other sports had he played in the past, and tennis was the one that was most noticeable. So with a tennis racket, we kind of went, right, if we were hitting towards the camera there, we'd need to get the racket head pointing at the camera. If you were playing more of a slice shot for a right-handed golfer, how would you play it? And he went, well, the club face would be looking more to the sky and I'd work across. And I went, okay, so if you leant forward and did that, and he went, well, that's my golf swing. Perfect. So I said, so if I wanted you to hit the ball down to the ground, what would you need to do with the tennis racket? He said, well, I'd feel, and for him, he felt kind of the right hand and the right forearm rotate a little bit more. I was like, okay, so that'd be an interesting, different feeling, wouldn't it? So instantly, we put the tennis racket down, picked the golf club up, and made him just do a couple of rehearsals with that kind of feeling. And straight away, he noticed it was very, very different. So he stood there. It was a much more solid strike. Straight away, as I've demonstrated there, we saw a completely different club path. It was still a tiny bit out to in, but the club face was then closed, which made him miss left. Now, even though it missed left, he was very excited because he'd never really intentionally seen the ball do that again. So we asked him to do it again. And the strike, like I've shown there, wasn't quite as good. Club face was still really good, but the path was a bit more exaggerated. So I obviously had him do a few more than 2 swings. And once we said, okay, so you've now got a feel for how the club face or the racket face would have been working through impact. I said what was very interesting though, every time he set up, he really made a point of making sure his feet, knees, hips and shoulders were dead square. So I said to him, if you were going to hit towards the camera there, that top spin shot, I said, would you keep your body in that position with tennis? So he kind of demonstrated and went, well, no, I'd kind of drop my back foot back, which would create some room to drop the racket into. And then I could kind of go from low to high with that club face closing. And we were like, okay, maybe there's something in that. So the idea was this is going to change his path. His only conscious thought was what he was doing with the club face. So he set up, we dropped the foot back quite a lot to begin with, to be fair, and then tried to get him that feel of low to high through impact. And then we started to see some really different golf shots. I mean, I've demonstrated there 10 degrees from the inside, with the club face 5.5 degrees closed. Now I'm going to pop his number up of his best one, and we can see here it's not quite as exaggerated as mine, but it was super impressive. Now his first worry was, well, I'm not doing things correctly. To which I responded, is it not textbook that it's not correct? Or are you doing what you need to do? So he said his body was so used to that pattern of movement that we needed to change something, made it feel different, look different. And it was unbelievably good how he was able to just stand there, bring that foot back, really focus on what he was doing with the club face. And he just didn't miss one shot out to the right. Hit lovely little draws, started hitting the ball further. And his feedback was actually, he couldn't believe how easy it was. And I had to correct him and say, it's not necessarily easy, it's very simple. So if you can change your path and your club face, you will definitely influence the ball differently than before. If it's easy, you'll manage to do it perfectly every time, or incredibly close to perfect. So it's not easy, but it's simple. And as long as you can keep your focus in the areas, like we've shown there, that are going to make that big difference. So we actually said, right, now stand straight and make your old swing. And the numbers were nothing like. I mean, his body had adapted incredibly quickly. We actually started seeing a little bit from the inside, and the club face very slightly closed. Now, the funny thing was, and I'm not promising this with everybody, he really adapted incredibly quickly, and it was definitely the movement patterns that he had from another sport was the reason he was able to understand it and implement it so easily. Now, if you're somebody that has played tennis, I think that can be a great way, and even take the tennis racket down to the range and think, you know, if I was hitting the ball with the tennis racket, how would I need to get that racket back to the ball to make the ball set off where I wanted? And once you can get that feeling, it's so much easier to stand up there, focus on what you need to do, make a decent swing. Obviously for me, that's the nice easy one. A little bit from the inside, low point ahead, club face very slightly closed. And like I said, you know, I really felt I needed to share this with you today, because if you are somebody that slices the ball, that feels it's almost impossible for you to draw it, it's not. The first thing you need to fix is the face. Once you fix the face, then you need to get the ball, if it's a draw, to set off right. So if my club face is closed to my path, I need to make sure I align far enough right to put that swing on it, start drawing the ball, and kiss goodbye to those horrible, weak fades and slices.